Hey everyone, it's been far too long since we've all been able to gather together under normal conditions. And even though we've been able to conduct our live in-person worship services for the last 2 months, we're still not out of the danger zone for the coronavirus. And so many of you have not been able to feel safe about joining us yet. We want you to know that we miss you. And even those of you who have been able to be here, we all still miss being able to fellowship the way we normally would in healthier times. This year has been unlike anything we've ever seen before, and it has changed so many things about our daily lives. It certainly has altered the way we plan and the way we function. Major life events like weddings, births, surgeries, and funerals have continued to happen, but under less than ideal circumstances, to say the least. The arrival of this virus definitely created challenges for our All In project as well. It's been over 18 months since we first kicked off our fundraising campaign for the development, renovation, and expansion of our grounds and facility. So many of you boldly stepped out in faith on April 7th, 2019, and not only helped to give the largest one-day offering we've ever seen in our church's history, but many of you also made a 3-year commitment to help support this vision that we believe God has given to us. Now, on our original timetable, we would have seen the beginning of site work starting this past spring, and we would be well into the renovation and expansion of the building itself right now. However, when COVID-19 brought our country and its economy to a screeching halt in mid-March, everything went into a holding pattern. Our lending partner, Christian Financial Resources, or CFR, initially put all of their projects on hold. Now, the great thing about working with them is that they only work with churches and parachurch organizations. The last thing they want to do is to overlend so that a ministry is burdened by debt and can't be effective in doing the thing that we were created to do. National trends, we're seeing churches having to shift to an online-only model. Engagement around the country and around the world was going down, as was giving, in churches of every size in just about every region. Now, I am thankful to say that our church wasn't hit nearly as hard as many others were. Many of you were able to follow us online, and you were patient with us when technology was sometimes working against us, and you were incredibly faithful in all of your financial support of our ministry and specifically the All In campaign. As of the end of October, we are right on track with the commitments that we have made. Some of you have not been able to give as much as you had hoped, and without a doubt, the instability of the last several months has played a role in that, and we understand. However, some of you have given far and above what you had committed initially. We've had other gifts come in from outside of our church family by people who simply love this church and believe in its vision and who've been blessed by its ministry, even if they don't live here in Moncks Corner. So due to the pandemic, we basically had to start the loan process all over again so that CFR could reevaluate our financial fitness in light of the new reality in which we and all churches now found ourselves. Even after finding some money-saving ideas of our own from the original projected cost of last fall, we found ourselves still looking at increased construction cost. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. There was a period of a few weeks there in the spring and early summer where I was really discouraged and defeated. I wondered if the whole project was going to have to be pushed back even further. Our leadership and our project team prayed a lot. We had several Zoom meetings and phone conversations with our architects to find ways to eliminate more cost, with our general contractor to try to mitigate some expenses, and of course with CFR to make sure we were being responsible with how much risk we were taking. The bottom line is that if we took out the sized loan that we would now need to complete the project we had originally planned, even with the amount of money that we had raised thus far and what has been pledged, we were looking at a gap of a little over $200,000. Now, for a project that is over $2 million, that might not seem huge, but let's be honest, it's still significant. Our lender, our architect, and our builder are all used to seeing changes in markets affect the schedule and scope of projects like this. However, most of this was new territory for them as well. Yet through all these meetings and conversations, prayer, and careful planning, our church and our project partners came to a consensus about the path forward. We have decided to break the project into 2 parts. The first part of the project is the site work. This includes the building of a new entrance, new parking, and all the preparation for the grounds for all future development. This part of the project will cost around $325,000. Now, we've already paid some of these costs, and we have the cash already on hand to cover a large part of the remainder. Yet, we decided to go ahead and apply for an initial loan of $500,000. That was the purpose of our congregational vote back in September. We wanted to have the flexibility of using these funds if needed, and also not using up all the cash we had on hand so that we are best positioned for the second part of this project whenever that begins. Now, we won't start paying on this loan until we begin to draw on it, and any amount of it that we do not use will be deducted from the larger loan we will secure from CFR before we begin the second stage of this project, which will be the renovation of our educational wing and the expansion and new construction of our new lobby and fellowship hall spaces. We believe that finally seeing dirt move and progress happening is going to be a great source of momentum to our church. It's going to create excitement and be a catalyst for more people to get engaged in this campaign. Dividing the project into two parts also gives us more time to communicate the need and to raise the additional funds so that any amount that we have remaining to borrow will be a figure that we can safely and responsibly assume without putting the church under an unhealthy burden of debt moving forward. As your pastor, and on behalf of the elders, I can promise you that we will not move into the second part of this project until we have confidence that we can do so responsibly and that we will not put the church into a position where we are overburdened by debt. Now, our site work has already started. The entire construction schedule for this part of this project should take about 2.5 months, but considering that that's going to include the holidays, it's likely that it will be the end of February, maybe the beginning of March before it's completed. You know, it's interesting to me that when you begin a journey like this, along the way, some of the faces of those who are traveling with you can change. We've had a few families who have had to move away in the last 18 months. They gave to fund a project that they quite possibly might not get to experience. Yet some of them are continuing to give to it because they believe in the greater kingdom investment that they're making. We've also been blessed with several new families who have started to worship with us since our last major project update last November. To some of you, this might be the first you are hearing about All In. Maybe you've seen the artist renderings on the wall in the sanctuary, but you're not really sure what it's all about. So to conclude this update, I want to inform our newer folks and remind those who've been here of the most important detail of all, and that's why. It's been said by many wise people throughout history that you need to know your why, because if you don't, you'll end up wasting your time, your talents, and treasures on things that ultimately don't really matter. So why are we doing this? And maybe we also need to understand why now. Jesus has called his church throughout the world to grow. Jesus has commissioned us to go and make disciples of all nations. Now, that certainly means that we need to start being more effective at reaching the harvest field where he's planted us. God has positioned this amazing body of believers at this moment in history and in this community of Moncks Corner. Our community is growing and changing. More and more people are moving here every day. In addition to the neighborhoods already surrounding us, in the next few years, right on our doorstep will be hundreds of new homes. There's also great need in our community. Marriages are failing. Children are suffering. Lives are broken, and people are lost in every sense of the word. It's the same thing that Jesus noticed in Matthew 9 when he looked out at the culture he was in and realized that they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And Jesus called his disciples around him that day and stressed the need both then and in every future generation for faithful followers who would help bring his healing to those who are broken. Those who were a part of this church in a previous generation had the foresight to relocate to this strategic location. And over the last several years, God has been sowing the seeds of a vibrant, diverse fellowship of thriving disciples who are passionate about reviving distressed families and renewing damaged souls to restore all people to the Christ-centered life. Yet, we had some physical obstacles with our site and facility that we had to break through. We needed more parking. We needed more space for our people to be able to be with each other, not just before and after worship services, but throughout the week. We needed children and youth spaces that were updated and easier to make secure so that the young families of our community would know that we value them and we want to help them build strong foundations in their marriages and their homes. You see, that is our why. We want to do whatever it takes to see this community be reached for Jesus. And in order to make that happen, we knew we needed our people to go all in so that we could bring all in. Over the next couple of months, we want to reach out to everyone. For those we haven't seen or heard from in a while, we just want to make sure you're doing well and see if there's any way that we can minister to you, especially while you are unable to be with us in person. We want to thank you for your support of God's vision for us. We also want to pray for and encourage everyone to fully go all in. We want to move forward responsibly, but the need is real. And as Jesus said in Matthew 9, the fields are ripe for harvest. We desperately want to see the second part of this project begin as soon as possible. That's going to mean that everyone who is a part of our church family, locally, and even those of you who started to engage with us online, be fully committed to seeing this vision become a reality. Our prayer and goal is that by the beginning of January, everyone who is a part of this church has given towards this vision. Even if it's a one-time gift, even if it's a smaller gift, we believe that even more than a dollar amount, the greater impact will be the momentum of an entire church body fully focused on faithfully resourcing God's mission and vision. This has been a long and winding journey, to say the least. This is actually what my hair, or lack thereof, looked like when this campaign started. But on this journey, God has taught me so much about depending on Him and trusting in His timing. These last few months especially have taught us so much about trusting in Him in the face of all that we can't explain and all that we can't control. We believe that this is God's vision, and we trust that He is going to provide. We also believe that God's instruments for that provision are right here, His people, our church family. I'm so blessed to be your pastor, and I look forward to the next chapters of the story that God is writing in our lives as we seek to faithfully serve Him.